Well, I was born on accident while my mom was visiting her mom in Springfield, Colorado. And when I was able to travel, she took me back to Weatherford, Texas. And I lived there with her, my dad, and my two half brothers until I found her dead when I was 6. And after that, my brother, that's 11 years older than me, he became the middle child when I was born. And 3 instances I remember he tried to kill me after she died because I made him the middle child, and that made our mom hate him, he said. And then when my dad came home from work in the morning one time and found fires burning under the house, and I was alone asleep in the trailer, he decided to send me to his high school sweetheart who he had re-encountered in Los Angeles. And so I got off on LAX to this red-haired lady with hand puppets, and I lived with her for about a year. And then she sent me to live with her family that I didn't know in Roseburg, Oregon. I was there for about a year before I saw my dad again. And when we finally all reunited in Roseburg, we lived there for some years together. And then we moved to Camp Creek, Oregon, which,
How old are you at this time when this is happening?
oh, wow. One of the coping mechanisms with finding my mom dead is I forgot a lot of my childhood. And more so, like, all the memories of my mom went away, except for some really violent ones that I witnessed with her and my brothers, which that's another thing. I have Fragile X syndrome, which that's a mutated chromosome that it affects me in many, many different ways, but it affects me and my mom in the way of we go to aggression a lot faster and simpler than other people. And my mom was very bad, really, really bad
And
on
that's
that.
what you remember, that
I only
part of
remember
your mom?
violence, yeah, but not against me, against my brothers and my dad. But and I mean, remembering that makes me want to control it. So I'm sure I do better than her, but I'm not perfect. Definitely far from perfect. But I was about 7 or 8 when I left Texas, and about 10 when I arrived in Roseburg, Oregon. When we left Roseburg, I was 11. And so I spent about a year on the farm in Springfield. And my dad, he loved birds. He grew up on a turkey farm. So he was famous for organic turkeys and stuff that were like so fat they could barely walk during Christmas and Thanksgiving. We had them all bought by big families, and he was very happy. But then my stepmom decided to leave him for a woman, and she got the house, and he went and got a second job and was living in a camping trailer beside a river, and rats would run over me at night. And so I went to the streets, and
At what age?
at 12.
Wow.
I was on the streets at 12. I had to survive by losing my virginity and, being with men for a roof over my head. But I can say I was on the streets from the age of 12 to 16, but I did not sleep one night on the street. I ran into my best friend slash brother. His name is Arturo Hernandez, and he was 18 and I was 12. And me and him are, twin flames. Like, we've shared a lot of lives together, and he found me in this one by when he turned 18. He was in Tucson, Arizona, and he got in his Oldsmobile and just started driving. When he hit I-5, he headed north, and his car broke down in Eugene, Oregon. And that's how we found each other in this life.
Wow.
And you know he got me into his street gang, and because I was white, I had to be 3 times crazier. You know, I had to be an army of one sometimes because I didn't necessarily have all the backup. And from the age of 12 to 14, I taught myself full Spanish with no American accent. Me and him had a bet going. He wanted to learn English with no Mexican accent. And so I said, well, I'll do the same. And I won. He lost.
And these are all like survival tactics.
Yeah, well, I've had the teardrop since I was 12. I put it there for my mom, but it was also a survival, thinking I was going to intimidate. But what it did was it intimidated the weak ones, but it brought the real ones to me. And so that just made me harder. And, I'm fearless, and I'm not afraid of pain. Pain goes away. I'll fight a man, no problem. I don't care if I get hurt. I mean, I've always just been stupidly brave, I call it, because I've done some epic things, but they were quite stupid.
Is there? I'm so curious about that, and the question that comes to mind is there a thought that's like, what have I got to lose? Like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like go for it.
Well, I always thought I was gonna be dead by my 30s. I mean, that was, I was sure I'd be gone by now. And so, reaching a certain age, it was an identity crisis because I wasn't planning on ever getting this old. I mean, I'm a grandma now, and I have 2 adult children and 1 minor child. And I mean, I have 2 grandbabies. I mean, I'm essentially the matriarch of a family because, it's me that should be keeping us together. And right now I'm letting everybody down being in this situation. So.
Let's go back a little bit. When you learned Spanish and you were with Arturo, how old were you at this time?
Well, when I was 12, they gave me the nickname of my brother. He wanted to take a picture of me, and I was in my Dickies and Cortezes and everything, and he was trying to make me like strike a pose, and so I did, and he goes, "Oh, bien chola," like that. And after that, everybody called me La Chola. And so if you look up my police file, I mean, I'll come up as La Chola. And my kids, they were so proud, to say that Chola, and Chola was their mom and Travieso was their uncle, because like I said, I did some epic things down there. I mean, I would meet people and they'd be like, I heard about you. I was always so scared to meet you, but you're pretty cool, But, some of the things I did were pretty bad, but fun. I mean, the coping mechanism, again, with my mom is I shut down feelings. I couldn't love anybody else. I didn't even love myself. And I never understood like how my friends could commit to one guy. If things got hard, they stuck by him. I would be gone, and I actually kind of hated myself for not being able to stick with somebody. But I miss that now because now I stick with everybody and they let me down.
It like flipped or something.
Huh?
It like flipped?
Yeah, it completely. Now that I'm able to love, all I do is experience pain. But when I was unable to love, all I did was give pain. So, there's no in between.
Well, what's happening in your 20s? Or even in your teens? In
my teens, those were crazy. I had my first son, Santana, at 17, a month after I turned 17. I got maced by the police twice when I was pregnant with him for fighting.
You're pregnant and fighting.
Yeah, I was fighting. I was in the dances. I was running drugs. I was... I didn't stop for nothing with Santana. And when he was born, he became my running partner. That boy, he is everything that I think a man should be. I raised him to be honorable, to be, everything that my homeboys were. I come from a good generation, not The sureños now, they've lost a lot of values. The street soldiers and stuff, and with the drugs and everything, it's not the same. I remember we used to make rules before we fought. It would be one on one. If anybody jumped in, then we all jumped. You know, now there's no making rules. They just go to killing each other. And I mean, we did have drive-bys and stuff like that, but those were extreme circumstances. Nowadays, life is so much cheaper. There's no value on it. But, there's no value on a lot of things anymore. I mean, they're out there robbing old ladies and shit, and, that wasn't us. It's not like we were like community fucking leaders or anything, but we had morals.
Yeah, there was like a line that you guys somehow didn't cross. I'm curious, you use the term running boy. Explain what that is.
Well, he was like, my dad called me his sidekick. He was always with me. He knew what was up. I didn't hide nothing from him. I mean, I didn't like do drugs like that in front of him, or let violence, really extreme violence, happen in front of him. I mean, he saw fights. Like, him and my daughter woke up one night with me choking their babysitter against the wall because she came at me after I came in the house. I knocked a guy's tooth out in front of him, and then my daughter squirted him with chamoy because he called my dead mother a bitch. Violence like that, but they never experienced like domestic violence or anything. I mean, mostly because people were afraid of me back then. Like, my husband, he would fight with me, but he would always lose. I mean, I was evil. I would look around my house when I was alone and had time to breathe and just look at everything and take note if I could use it as a weapon, because that was the kind of life I had, that I always had to make sure that I knew where something was I could defend myself with. Because
you never knew who was behind you, or...
Yeah. In my 20s, I met my husband, and this man followed me. I didn't like him at first, but he followed me everywhere. I mean, he would go to Mexico and I would move, and then I would be sitting outside one day and he'd come walking up. Somehow he found me. I mean, and then, we were together and broke up, and finally, at around the age of 20 or 21, we decided we needed God. And so we went to find a church to go to, and we found the Pentecostal church.
Well, pause real quick. What was the turning point? Like, why did you decide, let's find God, and what were you looking for and hoping for?
And I guess we felt like there had to be more to life. Like, we were trying to make a turnaround. I didn't know how to live, a normal life.
But something in you was like,
I was tired.
Okay.
At
21.
Yeah.
Tired.
I was tired of the street, and I was tired of dysfunction, and tired of having to always be paranoid. I mean, people would try to cut my brakes, and they'd cut my brake fluid lines. I had sugar in my tank. I had tires slashed, just being ran off the road. Stuff like that.
Sounds very stressful.
And I was on a lot of crystal meth, and that takes fear away. And so, I mean, I used to transport drugs, and I would, smoke meth and get in my lowrider with pounds in back and turn my music up, and I'd have a sheriff behind me and not give a damn. But I had license and insurance, so, and I knew my rights. That was another thing, when I was younger, I didn't know my rights, and I was put in a gang file illegally at the age of 12. Nobody was with me, and pictures were taken of my tattoos and of me, and I was, put in that gang file. And even it haunts me today. I mean, because I have the gang task force out here. They stop by every once in a while. And, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I accidentally got my son put in a gang file. He was getting a tattoo and he asked me what he should get. And I said, "Oh, get brown pride. You're proud to be half Mexican." And he got in trouble and put in a boys' home. And he called me and he goes, "Thanks, Mom. You got me registered as a gang member." Yeah. So, and I was like, it was going to happen, you know.
So at 21, you guys went to
Church.
Pentecostal church. I know a little bit about the Pentecostals.
I chose the Pentecostal church because when I was sitting in the pew, the best, most beautiful, warm feeling just came over me. And, you know, I said, "God, touch me." And I told my husband, you know, "We found our church. This is where we need to be." And it was where we needed to be, even though I did not completely agree with all of their beliefs. But they are the ones that ultimately talked us into getting married. So we got married and we were together a year before he abandoned me. You know, my family says that marriage ruins relationships, and I kind of believe it. Although me and him have been married now for 24 years.
You guys are still legally married?
Yeah. He has refused to divorce me. And, you know, I could go and get an abandonment divorce and everything, but I guess I don't know, I'm still holding on.
Yeah, there's something in you. A little hope.
Although I know that he's never coming back. But, yeah, that was really hard to get over, his abandonment. I let my life go to hell waiting for him to come save me. And he never did. So he just kept having kids down there. Now he's with some girl with a mustache that looks more like a man than a girl.
In Mexico?
Yeah, but I guess she is a woman because they have a kid, so she somehow made it. But she looks like a man. Sorry, I'm hating a little bit. But
well, it's okay to be angry. You know, I hear the anger and hurt. Yeah. And right next to that.
Well, it's because the woman he left me for, when she broke up with him, he could have called and said, "Okay, come home," because, you know, it was a mistake that what he did, but he had to honor it. But when he could have fixed everything, he chose that bitch. And so I hate her more than the one that he left me for.
Yeah, it's very hurtful.
And the one that he left me for, you know, in 2010, some bad things happened that I don't really want to get into, but I was in a coma for 3 months due to sepsis and on life support. And they were calling Mexico and he was making the decisions. And when I finally made it out of the hospital, she was so jealous because he made a promise to the Virgin that if I lived, he would stop drinking. And he stopped drinking. She should have been happy about that. But it made her so jealous that she told me I should have had him pull the plug on you. And that if this ever happens again, I will have him pull the plug on you.
Ouch.
And the thing is, my husband is such a little bitch. I know that he would pull the plug on me. So that's why every time I go in for any medical thing, I always make sure I write something out, taking responsibility from him and putting it on someone else.
Because since you're legally still married,
I don't even want him to know
right.
I'm in the hospital because he could pull the plug on me.
At some point you said you lived in Mexico?
Yeah, for a couple of years, in 2002 to 2003 or 4. We lived in Omielca, Veracruz, and that is pretty much sugar cane and a sugar refinery. My in-laws had, you know, some parcelas of sugar cane, and I loved the time when it was time to burn the sugar cane before they cut it, because the whole town was encircled with it, and so when it was burning, ashes would rain down, and it was like apocalyptic. But I mean, the first safaran that they call it came, you know, it was interestingly eye-opening and kind of terrifying. But then, you know, it became cool. Like, oh, look at the ashes, and all the houses were made out of cement because of that. And in Veracruz, it's big on witchcraft, and my mother-in-law, she had everything to protect from anything sent against us. And I was always having to take the open scissors behind the doors and put them up because my daughter would grab them. They were meant to cut the things that were sent to hurt us. Yeah, and I mean, I learned a lot there about that, and I saw some things that kind of proved to me that there is other things in this world that do exist that the Bible says are wrong, but they do exist. So I mean, I've seen it. But I mean, I loved Mexico. I loved the pace of life. I loved how everybody, we were selling sweetbread, pan and bolillos, and we would go to the ranches, and we would got all of the customers because everybody wanted to see the American and the two Chicano kids. And so we were making money that way. And I was like kind of famous there, and we'd go across the speed bumps in front of the high school, and this big fat lady that sold oranges would be like, "Ira la gringa," and announce that I was there and stuff. It was fun.
That sounds like a good time, like a good chapter.
And the rivers were so beautiful, and the food was so fresh and good. I mean, and once I got over the 3 months of bathroom hell from the parasites, because it doesn't matter if you avoid the water, they're gonna get you. And I went through hell, but I finally built up a resistance against it, and thank God, because now not much can get me sick. So, but yeah, I mean, I have always planned to retire in Mexico at some point, but probably on the border, because I don't want to have a 3-day ride from where I am to the border.
Well, you're still married. You have citizenship in Mexico or no?
No, I had to buy permission to be in there, which I stayed way over my permission.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I remember a cop pulled us over and was threatening to deport me, and I was having a bad day, and I was like, "Deport me, it's a free ride home. I don't give a damn." But yeah, he was too fat and lazy to deal with it. It was just a threat so that we would pay him off, because during that time, they only wanted money. I mean, we paid so much money when we entered in Tecate, and by the time we made it to Omielca, we had spent over $1,000.
Just paying people off?
Paying, the biggest one was in Sonora, the inspection there. We had to pay for a piece of paper that said that they made us take everything out of our truck. And they inspected it and everything was okay, which in reality, we didn't take nothing out of the truck. We gave them $500 and they gave us that paper. We could have been carrying freaking guns and cash. It didn't matter.
Well, at some point, you came back to the States.
Yeah.
And where'd you go to?
I went back to Oregon. Okay. And I applied for my taxes, and I got a place to live. And
with your husband or without?
No, I left my son down there with my husband. I brought my daughter back, and a couple months later, when I went to the border to pick my son up, he no longer spoke English. He had forgotten English that quickly. And I picked my son up and went back to Oregon, and I waited for the call that my husband had been crossed so I could pay the coyote. And I paid for him to be driven from the border to my front door in Oregon. And around that time, he started cheating on me with a 14-year-old girl that looked just like me when I was 15. And we were also moving dope at that time. We had picked back up what we had been doing before we went to Mexico. And, I found out about the girl, and I was able to forgive him, because since we were married through the church, I was set on being like my grandparents and working through everything, no matter how bad it was. And I was able to get over it. I mean, it was really hard. Like in the beginning, when we would be together, I would wonder if he did the same thing with her, and that would just ruin everything. But then, slowly that started going away, and pretty soon, I was able to look at him again as my husband. But he never stopped. It turns out he's a sociopath. I think, it's all about him. He can't remember my birthday. He can't remember our wedding date, our wedding anniversary. He can't remember anything, but anything about him or what he wants, he knows it all. To butter me up sometimes when we talk, because we still talk on and off. But I haven't talked to him since he took off with that dog bitch. But yeah, he'll try to butter me up by sending me a picture of our wedding license that he still has. And it's just like, that's a piece of paper, rip it up. That doesn't make me happy you kept it. It just makes me sad.
Yeah, he's trying to hook you back in a little bit.
He likes to try to manipulate me. And before, the manipulation gave me hope. But now I see it for what it is. And it runs off like, water off a duck's back.
Right.
I just, in one ear and out the other.
Gotcha.
I don't even really listen to it anymore because I know it's all bullshit. It's prison talk. He's not in prison, but essentially. He actually called me some years back and asked if I would help him apply for a second chance entry. Because after I got him back and after the cheating and after all that, we get busted by the DEA and the local narcotics agency. And, they ended up deporting him and telling him that if he came back within the 12 or 16 years that they were going to give him, then he would have to do that time. And so when I was getting ready to move to Mexico, he called me and said I made a mistake. And I said, "What'd you do?" And he said, "I stole a girl." Down in Mexico, stealing a girl is, you take your girlfriend to your house and you take her virginity, and she stays with you then because she's ruined. If you take her home, the family will kill you because you ruined her. She's no good for any other man. And so I said, "Well, take her back." And he said, "Her uncles will kill me." And I said, "Well, I guess it's just going to be like this then, huh?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I've been married to him for 24 years, but she was with him for about 20 of them. They have 4 or 5 kids together. And
it's interesting. Like, on one hand, I'm like, this does not sound like a very good dude. But on the other hand, earlier you're like, I haven't divorced him because there's this little pin drop of hope for what?
I love him. I'll always love him just as much as I did when I married him, because when, in the Bible it says that he who sends the letter of divorce is the one that takes the sin, and the one that receives it is free, to live on, to remarry and stuff. And we're not divorced or anything like that, but essentially he's the one that's gonna go down for everything that happened. I would have dropped everything and went back right when he called me to honor my promise to God. And so I don't feel as though I'm going to hell. I feel that he's condemned.
Yeah, sounds complicated for sure.
Yeah, and I try to talk to him about that. Do you realize that you're going to hell? And he just goes, "Oh, God forgives everything." Well, yeah, he forgives, but if you keep committing the sin, he's gonna stop forgiving. Or, he's gonna forgive you. You're gonna commit the sin again. You're gonna die before he forgives you again. You're going to hell. So, but he doesn't understand. He is so sure because, he's a sociopath. I can't convince him of any reality. And I really thought that he believed in God and his word and everything, but he was just putting on an act or something. I mean, I really wish I would have seen what he was before
Yeah, yeah.
I made a life and promises to him, because his promises, I used to tell him that his promises were like water, you can't hold them. And so
When did you come up to Seattle? At what point?
I was in what is the name of the town? Manchester. I was in Manchester, Tennessee, with a man named Joaquin that grew up 4 houses down from my husband. We met on Facebook, and we had been together since 2016, so for 2 years. And I came out here because my stepmother, the one that, left for a woman and ruined my life, wanted me to come out here because she wanted to be a grandma. Her 2 daughters didn't have any children.
So she wanted you to come here with your kids.
Yeah.
And Joaquin was here?
No, Joaquin was in Tennessee.
Okay, gotcha.
And so she paid for an Amtrak and for a pod, and for, she buttered me up. I mean, and before that, for years, she was, putting money in my bank account and sending gifts and everything, trying to get me to come back. And I wish I would have never talked to her, because it's her fault that I'm out here. But, so we came out here, and it was good. I mean...
Lived with her?
Yeah, living with her. And we lived in Edmonds for 4 years behind Safeway. And then I started dealing. I picked up a part of the market that, the plugs didn't want to do, $5 foils. And I came up that way, and I had met Ray, because me and Joaquin by that time had broke up because he really messed up. We came out here, and then he called us back, and me and my son got on Greyhound and rode 3 days just to find out he had another girl that he chose over us and put us on the street out there. And that hurt a lot. But then she is in jail now for murder for 30 years because her and her new fiance that she had 2 days after breaking up with him killed an old man for his pills, money, and car. And they took off and were caught by U.S. Marshals in Oklahoma City. And so she's doing 30 years in prison, and I need to write her a letter, because she is the most manipulative bitch. It was a soap opera with her. She faked a brain tumor and a pregnancy to keep him. I mean, I swear she set an alarm for the middle of the night just to wake him up crying that her head hurt. Yeah, and then she somehow got pregnant on chemo, a poison, and gave him an ultrasound with no name on it, no date, and it was of a 6-month fetus, even though they hadn't been together that long. And he ate all of this up, all of it. And he never acted like he knew me on Facebook. He never put pictures of me up. He never did anything. But with her, he was friends with her on Facebook. He would comment how beautiful she was, and he loved her on pictures. He never did anything like that for me, so that killed me. But I ended up meeting this guy named Williams Saavedra, and he was in Mexico City, and he was a fine-ass gangster. He lived in Magdalena Contreras. That's a neighborhood in Mexico City over by Los Dinamos. And he was all tatted except for his face here. Everything else tatted. And for a surprise one day, he sent me a picture because he had a charra on his back, a big charra, and there was a sombrero that was like this big. And in the sombrero, my name was tattooed. I'd never met him in person, anything. And his girlfriend he has now, I think her name is Baby Doll or something. Yeah, she hates me.
Because of that tattoo.
She really, and his ex-wife, when she saw how big my name was, I guess she hit him. But, that was flattering. And so I'm on Facebook, putting my life with Williams on there, and my name on his back and all this stuff. And, Joaquin is secretly watching everything. And he told me, years later that he was suffering with her and that he wished he would have never picked her over us. He doesn't know why he did it. But anyways, when they broke up, I paid for a ticket for him to come out here. And he tortured me for 2 years because he never saw an error in his ways. He never could apologize. He could never try to make anything right. And so I broke up with him, but he stayed in the house. And I started coming out here. And I had met Ray a couple years before when he was behind Sprouts with some other homeless people. And I came out here looking for, a better plug. I wanted cheaper prices. And
real quick,
huh?
When you say better plug, define plug for our audience here.
Somebody that has, what you need, merchandise that you need. And I needed cheaper prices. And so I went to 125th and Aurora, right there by the tiny home village. And I parked my truck and got out, and I was standing on the sidewalk, and I hear this, Mexican accent go, "Are you okay, Mom?" And I looked, and I was like, "I'm okay, Ray." And he got all happy, and he goes, "I dreamed about you last night. Come here, come here." And he took me to his camp that was behind the old Les Schwab, right there by the tiny homes, by the cemetery. It was a really cool spot that he had. And, I started hanging out there, and he helped me find a plug. And, I was working out of his tent and everything. And I came up. I was, making good money and everything. And then, we ended up forming a relationship. And, he was the best thing that had happened to me, I thought. He was the first man that never prohibited anything out of jealousy. Like, he wanted me to dress seductively because he would put his arm around me and smile at the men that were staring at me. And, he would tell me how beautiful I was, and he would tell me how strong I am. And, he was a breath of fresh air, even though he was robbing me blind behind my back. I found out. But then he asked me to marry him, and I thought he was a homeless drug addict with nothing to offer me. And I still, accepted the request. And then he told me, "I have something to tell you, that I actually have money." His daughter had been killed in Paris while she was studying overseas from her university in California for 6 months in Paris. She was killed in a terror attack by ISIS, the only American that was killed in that attack. And he sued Google. He's in Wikipedia, Gonzalez versus Google, because they had posted videos before and after the attack. And then they sued the country of Syria because Syria allowed ISIS to train their soldiers in their country. And he was awarded $3.5 million.
But he's living in a tent.
Yes, because the money didn't bring his daughter back. And because shootings were happening all around him and nobody knew why. It was ISIS. A lot of people from that lawsuit have died under mysterious circumstances.
So he's kind of hiding out?
Yes, that's why he has a cell phone in his brother's name. That's why his RV is in his brother's name. Nothing is in his name. When I first was with him, I was violently ran off the road. And I hadn't been here long enough to make enemies. I didn't understand why. And after he told me about that, he goes, "And when that happened, I am thinking they think you are going to be an heir to, the money, and so you need to be taken out too." And so, yeah. And so the bank accounts were closed, and the money was going to the the lawyer in New York. And then when I ended up homeless because my mom put a protection order on me with a bunch of lies about me waving guns at her and stuff, just because she was mad that I was spending more time out here.
You could see your stepmom.
Yeah, which, she put a restraining order on me and my dad when I was 12, stating about the same circumstances. And so this is her MO of getting rid of people. Yeah. And so he opened his accounts back up so that he could take care of me. But the money's cursed because when he came back with the money, he was a monster. Completely changed. And out of necessity, when he bought the RV, me and my son went to live with him, and ultimately he ended up driving away with everything we own. And he still hasn't came back.
Yeah. And that was maybe a month or two ago? Because I remember I saw...
And I've had to prostitute to survive out here. My son spent a night on the streets because of him. My son didn't deserve the memory of chasing after that RV screaming. So I'm not going back. I hate him. He's abandoned me before, but never with my son, because Joaquin's still at my mom's house. And so, I took Santos there, and he's with Joaquin. Joaquin has completely changed over all this. He started going to church. He had to deal with the same pain that he put me through when I was with Ray. And, he's actually a decent human being now. And so he's been helping me a lot.
So Joaquin is at your mom's house?
Yeah.
And your son?
He's there with Joaquin. Yeah. Joaquin is essentially his dad.
Gotcha. But you're not allowed back there?
No.
Yeah. And so since Ray left in the RV, you've just been living on the streets?
I have my 2 adult children and my grandchildren. They're in East Tennessee. And, last time I talked to Ray, he said, I'm going to put you up in a motel and I'm going to get you a car so I know you're okay. But then he never came and he never called. He blocked me. So that means even though I didn't ask for him to say that or do any offer, he was just being sadistic because he put what he wanted of mine into my storage for me to have. He took the SIM card out of my phone so I couldn't survive out here. And I don't understand what I did so terrible. His brother is a son of a bitch too. I hate his brother. Felipe Gonzalez Razo is a fucking monster. I hate him.
Yeah, well, I think something earlier you said, if you pulled that money out, sometimes money
his brother
changes
is
people.
The executor over everything, and so he's, it's affecting him too.
Yeah. So,
but they're terrible people. When he talked about his mom and dad, I imagined some of the greatest parents in the world, but with how those two act, I'm starting to think they were bigots. They were terrible people too.
Yeah, you don't really know.
So, but that's how I've ended up here. There's so much more I've missed.
Sure.
So much,
of course.
Essentially, that's it.
Well, I appreciate you being that vulnerable, and I'm sorry. That is tough.
I've made it through worse. So.
I couldn't imagine worse. I'm like, woof, Weda.
Well, I had to learn how to walk again, so, if I can do that, I can get out of here.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Tell me about Aurora Commons. How long have you been coming here?
Ray brought me here last summer, so off and on since then. Yeah. They've helped me, like when my truck broke down last summer. And then they helped me before he got the motorhome. He had us in a motel, but he abandoned us for 2 weeks. So they put us up in a motel for a couple days. And then he came and got us after he had partied sufficiently in the RV before he let us go to it. And, he had to ruin the RV for me and everything. He made every atmosphere negative. And so.
You guys never did get married?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, although not too long before he drove away in the RV, he came out and put a ring on my finger and asked me to marry him again. And, and now he was messing around with Luba. You know Luba? Oh, well, he was messing around with another woman before we were together, and she caused so many problems, so they weren't supposed to have contact, but now everybody's telling me what they saw. And they never stopped having contact, and now they're messing around again because since she heard about the money, even though Syria stopped paying, if she checks the internet, there's more court documents. They're going back to court. He receives $500 on every Tuesday. That's all the money he has. And she's messing around with him for a damn stipend.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, she's ridiculous. I sent a message to his Facebook saying, if you help me get to Tennessee, you can have all of Seattle to yourself. You don't have to hide the RV no more. And you can have Luba with no problems. Just help us go home. But no response yet. So.
Well, I'm curious, you're on the streets. Where did you stay last night, and where are you staying tonight?
Last night, I stayed around the corner. And tonight, I haven't decided. I mean, with my personality, people are drawn to me. And, I have a lot of offers of going to, stay in others' tents or in their apartments or stuff. And so, I mean, it's getting easier to be out here. It was harder in the beginning.
Tell me about that. Easier to be out here. I can't imagine.
Well, I mean, with knowing where I'm going to stay and everything. Yeah.
Just like the more people you meet, the easier it gets, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
More a network.
So. I'm curious about your tattoos.
Oh,
are you open to talking about them?
This one says, "Forgive me, God," because my brother had, or Arturo, he had forgive me, Mom," and since my mom's dead, I got "Forgive me, God," and then I have the teardrop that I got for her, and I have the Mayan symbol for 13 because we're Sureños, and yeah, I mean, all of my tattoos are essentially gang related. Oh, that one is because here it's a star for me, my oldest, and my middle.
Oh, I haven't seen those. Your hair's covering that.
Right here.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, there are birthstone colors, but there was no room for another one because, Santos, the youngest, he was a surprise. And so he got the place of honor.
Gotcha.
And he's so proud. People, when he's around and I get asked, what does it say? He goes, Santos Angel, that's my name. Yeah, so
gotcha.
He's proud that I have his name tatted over my eyebrow.
Gotcha, yeah. One last question before we wrap up. Is there anything that you want to say to the people of Seattle?
No, because this place is too... They've got their heads up their ass. I mean, they only see the problem. They don't look for a solution. In the motorhome, we couldn't park anywhere. I mean, they only see the problem. Why don't you find a place to put us that instead of just chasing us out of everywhere? Because all it did was make me angry. And so I'm jumping out of the motorhome fighting with them. It's getting old. And this homeless stuff, I know they make big messes, with their camps and everything and the drug use and all that. But these tiny home villages aren't helping because they give them a fence and bodyguards. So they go in there, they come out, they fucking do all this messed up shit out here, and then they go hide behind the wall. They don't realize that they're just creating monsters. I mean, so they need to reform a lot of stuff. They're doing everything the wrong way. They really are. There has to be more more programs. I mean, better tailored programs, and more better tailored housing, you know, and maybe more of a grip on the repeat offenders of, how do they say, the vagrants that are repeatedly homeless, something. Putting us in jail isn't going to help. And so, I don't know. But yeah, I can't wait to go back to the South because this place I can't stand. I'm a Southerner. I can't do this place anymore. I grew up in Oregon, but I'm not a Pacific Northwesterner anymore. I do not have the same values and views. And the South is so much more polite and helpful.
Yeah.
And caring and loving.
Yeah. How old are your children, if you don't mind me asking?
13, 26, and 29.
And so the 13-year-old you would take with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. He was an uncle at the age of 4. And his niece, Uncle Santos.
Yeah, yeah, get back
so
there.
Cute.
Right.
So.
Well, thank you for your time.
No
it's
problem.
Good to hear your voice. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can I grab that little mic?
Yeah.
Are you open for a hug? Oh, man. Been through a lot of